Hi, Rob Browne with you here, AU Undercover, the Wednesday show with Ronnie Sanders, Kevin Scarbinski, and we'll be joined in the second half of the hour by one of the best, a legend in the offensive line coaching world. He is to the offensive line what John Bonham was to the drum set. Rick Trickett will check in with us, and we'll talk with him. A lot of great stories. He is still coaching at Jacksonville State, so a lot to talk about. All right, kind of topics today. No doubt, activity in the transfer portal, football and basketball at Auburn. And right now, you got Chad Baker-Mazara. He's here. He's not. He did it last year, I've been told. I don't know if he's going to come back or not, but we set the table. So, Kevin, I know he's fighting through some rough weather up there in Birmingham. But, Ronnie, we need to have the crawl at the bottom of the screen giving us the names of the players on the roster at that moment. Kind of, you see breaking news and stock quotes and stuff at the bottom of the screen. Let's do that for the football rosters. Right now, the roster, when we began the show, was this, and halfway through the show, it could be different. Kevin, I was talking about Chad Baker-Mazara. He's here and he's not. But it's not just Auburn, Denzel Aberdeen. See you, Florida. And it was reported this morning, Brendan said he had heard $2 million. I don't know what Chad's going to get, but the person that gets him has to pay Auburn back. Is that how this stuff works?
Well, you're assuming that we have actual contracts and enforceable contracts, or schools are willing to hold athletes to contracts, which of course they should. And it does seem like the Empire's starting to strike back a little bit, with Tennessee refusing to renegotiate at the very end with Nico Iamaleava's father, representatives, advisors, whoever was counseling him. And now Arkansas, of course, Hunter Yurachek, their AD, put out that statement suggesting that they were certainly in favor of their collective, making sure that if they're due compensation from Madden Iamaleava, who's leaving there to go back to UCLA, who he spurned on signing day to sign with Arkansas, and spent the entire spring with them, and I guess he was ready to go back to the West Coast. So, look, that's the problem, is the sketchy nature, I think, of some of these contracts. But what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, and you've got to hold athletes, their representatives, their agents, family members, whoever, again, is advising them. You've got to hold them to the terms of the deal. And if you're a school and if you are not putting buyouts into these contracts, then you're foolish. Because for everyone who says, well, coaches can leave, they can leave after signing day, they do leave at times after signing, they can leave whenever they want. Yes, they can, but there are provisions in the contract to cover that. And if they leave, guess what? Someone pays a buyout typically to the school that they left, whether it's the coach himself, whether it is the new school that he's going to. So the contract covers those situations. That's what needs to be covered in these contracts with players. And players need to be held accountable.
Yeah. Ronnie, that being said, contracts, we hear about money, but we don't know for fact any of it's true. Right. But coaches do have contracts with clauses in them. The players, the coaches can do it. Well, why are the coaches and the people that run this college football stuff, why aren't they saying, then by God, you're going to have a contract? You want the big money? You have a contract. I don't think they have the backbone or the spine to call for that.
I think it depends on the school. I know some schools in particular are doing that. Others, I think look, as Kevin's pointed out, it's the wild, wild west right now. And everybody's kind of setting their own rules. I posted on our message board earlier today the outline for the House settlement and the changes that are proposed for NCAA legislation. But I think right now every school is different, and some schools are going to be more likely to hold kids accountable than others. And so I think a lot of these kids, if they get ready to walk out the door, they better get ready to pay. At least some of them, not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're hearing like Kentucky's going to spend $20 million on basketball NIL. That's what allegedly Ohio State did, Kevin, for their football team.
I'm not. First of all, I am not buying the $20 million figure for Kentucky basketball's roster for next year.
Yeah.
I'm just not. And again, this is a part of the problem. These numbers get thrown around, whether they're valid or not, or we don't know exactly where they're coming from in each case. And in some cases, it could be an agent or agents trying to pump up the value of their players. So the next time it's renegotiation time, which could be next week, you never know, they could try to squeeze even more money out of these deals. So, yeah, I'm not sure I'm buying the $20 million from Kentucky. Yeah. And look, you mentioned Chad Baker-Mazara. If the stories that Jeff Goodman from the Field of 68 was reporting earlier today, and I've heard something along those lines, that he already had a deal signed with Auburn for next year. He was not happy because the player they brought in from Central Florida allegedly was being paid more than he was. So he said, I need more. Auburn said, okay, we'll give you a little bit more. We're not going to give you as much as the other guy. And he said, that's not enough. So he went in search of more money elsewhere and put his name in the portal. And we'll see where he ends up. I know Arkansas has been mentioned, Kentucky, but Providence is another school that's been mentioned prominently that may be interested in bringing him in. And they brought in a whole bunch of new players. So we'll see where he ends up. But I don't know if there's an avenue for him to go back to Auburn, but that may be the best deal possible, because if Auburn holds him to what I was told were buyout provisions in his contract, he may be paying the Tigers back some money if they elect to hold him to that.
Yeah.
If he does go elsewhere.
And if somebody wants to pay his buyout for him, then those dollars have to be grossed up too, because that's considered income. So you're grossing that up. It's going to be a lot. Whatever the buyout is, it's going to be a lot more than what it says on paper.
He's already in the 38.6 bracket. I mean, and Nico, you remember when Nico and his brother, golly, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I mean, 13.25% state income tax. That will take a bite out of your ass. And that's what they're doing. They are forfeiting that money by going home to a program that's in dire financial trouble. That's why they joined the Big Ten. It's just crazy. All right, got to ask you about football. Auburn seems to keep who they want to keep in football. Knowing what we know now, I don't blame Bo Nix. I don't know how he stayed in the same room with Browne Harsin. But name me a player Auburn really wants that they've lost in football. Anybody?
The kid that flipped to Oregon offered.
No, I'm talking about that was already on the team. They've lost through the portal. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, Bo Nix would certainly top the list, and obviously the head coach may have thought he didn't really care whether he stayed or left. One of the reasons he's no longer the head coach.
Yeah.
But and one of the reasons Cal is now having issues with its roster since he became the offensive coordinator there.
Yeah.
Not a coincidence from anyone who's familiar with his experience at Auburn or his behavior, his attitude, etc.
Yeah.
But certainly Bo Nix. I think even though Auburn, I will say this, if you guys remember, Bo Nix at Auburn was not Bo Nix at Oregon.
No.
Or Bo Nix with the Denver Broncos as a rookie last year. He certainly improved and got better, but he was in turmoil. He was in a case where head coaches were changing, coordinators were changing, the roster was changing. Yeah. So he was not put in the best position to succeed at Auburn. But there was a lot of, you guys know, there were a lot of mixed feelings, I think, among the fans about Bo and what his ceiling was. How high could he go? How high could he lift the team?
Yeah.
But there were certainly factors there he could not overcome.
Yeah, and you look at this spring so far. Well, I mean, back even in the fall, Walker White left. He'll go to Baylor. But Auburn brings in Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight. And Ronnie, as personnel changes, they happen. Guys have always transferred the whole time we've played college football. I think we're starting to see a little bit of settling down, at least in the football portal, because the stats are coming out. If you're an offensive lineman and you're switching every semester, you're going backwards, basically.
Well, I think Nick Saban made a good point. Kids that transfer once, that's one thing. But the more a kid transfers, the less likely he is to graduate. And so if you've got a kid that's transferring three, 4 times, chances are he's not getting a degree. Yeah. And I think depending on the program, you have to recruit kids that want to be on your campus and that have an interest in getting a degree. If you've got a locker room full of guys who are going to jump in the portal after every year, you've got a culture problem. And I'm not sure that's what hasn't. That may be what has happened at Florida State, simply because you're rolling so many of those guys in there. You go 1 year, you're undefeated, and then the next year you won 2 games. So I think there's something to that. I think that the more kids you have that believe in your coaching staff, believe in your program, believe in your university, the less likely they are to hit the portal, and the more likely you are to keep them, even if they do.
Yeah. Kevin, have you seen any stats? I mean, something came out about basketball. I think over 60% of the kids moving around are either not getting picked up or they're going down. But what are the numbers like in football? We've got October 15th of 2018. So we've got 6.5 years of data to look upon.
Well, those numbers that you mentioned regarding basketball were eye-opening. That when you start, and it applies to every level. Mm-hmm. Obviously there are 364 Division I basketball programs. So there's a lot of disparity there from the top to the bottom. But even at the top level, as you said, I think it may have even been higher, but it was certainly a high number. It was over 50%, where if you are transferring, chances are better that you're going to move down in terms of the caliber of the program you're going to, or you won't find a spot at all. And that's what gets overlooked. What happens to the guys that don't find a spot? What happens to the guys that had stars in their eyes? I heard a story yesterday about a mid-major program, and one of the players went to the coach and said, look, I got an offer from another school. He hadn't even put his name in the portal yet. He got an offer from another school, and it was more money than that school was going to pay him, his current school, or could pay him, could even afford to pay him. And the coach said, look, we want you to stay. You have a role on this team. I can't pay you any more money. But be careful of the deal you sign or you agree to, or if it's a verbal agreement, that those are certainly red flags. And the player went ahead and left. And after the season, he came back to the coach and said, Coach, you were absolutely right. They had offered me this number, and this was, again, now we're not talking high major here, but this was, they offered me 50, ended up paying me only 5, told me I'd compete for a starting job. I got very few snaps. I never really felt like I got the opportunity to compete. So everything his head coach at his former school had warned him about, the negative, had come true. And we don't hear enough about those stories.
Yeah.
We've got, we've got Rick Trickett coming up next, for those that are watching live and didn't hear, but, I think he's dealing with some of the same things at Jacksonville State. He's got some players that are either in the portal, ready to hit the portal, and you're recruiting against bigger name schools with more money. And, it's a tough deal. I mean, for these mid majors, they're getting rated every year. And, some of them really need to take a step back and look and see, make sure that your actual agent, a lot of these guys who don't have any training at all, make sure that they're taking care. Make sure you've got somebody that can actually represent you and is looking at those contracts.
I want to throw a parallel out for everybody. Look at baseball. When we were all growing up, lots of kids in high school took the $250,000 and went to the minor leagues. And 5 or 6 years later, bad, cheap motel stays, bus rides, not making much money, collecting a lot of gold chains. They're coming back to college. And you're finding out that 3 years that you do when you sign a scholarship in college baseball, you got to play at least 3 years before you can go pro. Now, you can switch schools. We know that because of the portal. But look what has happened with college baseball and the quality and the number of SEC players that are going to the majors. Why doesn't college football try to follow a similar path? Because, I tell you, the stark contrast is there's only been one SEC baseball player ever make it to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. The Big Hurt, Frank Thomas from Brookstone in Columbus. So why not do it in football?
Well, in football, unless something's changed, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I used to, and I assume it's still the case, you've got to be out of high school for at least 2 years. And so, one example is when we were at Florida, we signed Channing Crowder, and he was hurt. I think he tore his ACL in high school, had an injury in high school, and we didn't have him report until the following spring. So technically he only played 1 year, but was 2 years out of high school. So when we were fired, and they brought in Urban, Channing left and went to the NFL. Actually was drafted by the Dolphins and played for Nick Saban. So I believe you've got to be out of be out of high school 2 years before they can draft you in the NFL.
Yeah, I thought it was 3. I thought it was 3 for football.
Maybe it
as
is
well.
3. Maybe
I think it's 3 for football. I don't think that's changed. I think that's still the same. Well,
forgive me, it's been 20 years. So
yeah, he was a heck of a player, though. Channing Crowder certainly was.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, though, Rod, that's an interesting point you make about college baseball. I had a long conversation with Paul Maneri when he was in between his LSU and now South Carolina stints, when it seemed like he was retired. He said it was the greatest recruiting pitch you could imagine. He would go to these high school kids, and of course LSU's recruiting in baseball, the elite of the elite, and say, okay, how do you want to spend your next 3 years? You want to ride a bus on road trips, or you want to fly in a nice plane?
Yeah.
You want to stay in a cheap motel, or do you want to stay in a first-class 5-star hotel?
Yep.
Do you want to eat roadside fast food, or do you want to eat catered meals? You want to play in rickety, rundown old ballparks, or do you want to play in the best facilities in the country? And do you want to have, if it's a pitcher, for example, do you want to have a different pitching coach every year for 3 years as you move up the ladder? Or do you want to have the same pitching coach for 3 years while you develop and you play against a bunch of guys in the SEC that are going to be playing professional baseball as well?
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong recruiting pitch for guys not to take the money unless you're a high first round pick and the money is too good to turn down. Why not go do what Wyatt Langford did at Florida and play 3 years? Look what he's doing with the Rangers now. Look at Paul Skeens. And he was a transfer to LSU.
Yep.
He's maybe the best pitcher in Major League Baseball right now. You certainly think he didn't benefit from that college experience and that time at LSU? He certainly did.
Well, and also you get 3 years in toward completing your college degree for whatever that's worth. Now, I mean, I would be kind of frustrated if my child went to college and got a degree in the antiquities or, Elizabethan culture, but I guess somebody in the coffee shop has to have someone to talk to. But I just think we look at the NBA. If you're not a high draft pick, lottery pick, it's not easy, but it's easier to get to Todd Pettiford, to come back. And that's why Bruce Pearl says, go out there, get graded. Why not do the same thing before guys go in the portal and get a grade, get a portal grade instead of just – because basically what the portal is okay, Coach Trickett's here. The portal is where a lot of guys go that didn't want to be put on the list that got cut, and they just say they're in the portal. But we got guys now that have used their eligibility that are hiding out in the portal. They're stowaways. But anyway, that's another subject.
We got
those guys. Some of those guys are hoping. Some of those guys are just hoping that the NCAA 5 years to play 4, or if they're going to make it 5 to play 5, is going to go away. Although those guys in North Carolina, the Duke and North Carolina players that sued, they didn't get their injunction.
Yeah.
We'll see how the case turns out.
Okay. Let's bring in Coach Trickett, Ronnie.
Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Been looking at these damn film portal guys all day. So crazy world we're in right now, boy.
You look good. Have you got a new office? It looks different than the one I was.
We're in a brand new building. We haven't been this $39 million complex. It will be August the 1st we've been in it a year. So we probably got the third best facility in the state of Alabama right now. And as far, I mean, it's big time. And then we're building a $22 million indoor closed in next door to it and stuff. So they've made a commitment here. So, it's a pretty good situation right now, except for this damn portal.
Talk to us a little bit about the portal. How's it different coaching at Jacksonville State versus coaching some other places?
Well, I haven't been in Power 5 or 4 now, how they call it. I haven't been up there, since this portal thing came about. I was coaching Glenville Division II when I came here at Rich. But it's here on our level, the thing, there's yays and nays. We're getting a better high school product now. We're getting the kid at Mississippi State or Louisville or Kentucky or some of them guys would have signed just right off the bat. Even back in the day when Coach Dye was at Auburn, a 6'6" guy that weighs 275, 80 pounds like Stacy Searles was, bring him in, develop him, in 2 years you got a 300-pound guy that's a good football player. We're getting that guy now out of high school. Problem is, after about 2-3 years, you coach the hell out of him, get him right, and then somebody comes along and they take him. Like right now, I've lost. We won the conference championship last year, and I think we led the nation in rushing and that kind of deal. We had a great running back, great quarterback, and I graduated Clay Webb. He a senior. Was from signed with Georgia and then came here and went to Senior Bowl and stuff and went to combine. He'll get drafted. And then a big right tackle transferred from Cincinnati a year ago. He's a senior. He'll get drafted or not drafted, but he'll sign. Then after that, we had 3 starters coming back. Well, I just lost the starting center the day before yesterday. He's going in the portal, and then yesterday I lost the left tackle. He's going to go in the portal. And, the left tackle, he's ready. He's been here 3 years, been a 3-year starter. It was a walk-on when I got here. He was getting 0.76 of a scholarship. They were buying these books. We went through one spring, and I told Rich, I said, hell, he's the best one I got. So we put him on scholarship. And, he's on his second master's degree. That kind of deal. So I don't have any. Hell, I'm helping him. I've called 3 or 4 schools and told them you need to take this guy. And stuff. But I didn't think the other kid was ready. To go up where he thinks he's going to go up and play. But I had one 2 years ago that went to West Virginia for $60,000. He was a freshman All-American and a freshman all-conference kid and played 28 snaps last year after he went up there and stuff. So, so there's the almighty dollar, when they start chasing that thing, it's not always good for some of them, and stuff. And that's why I didn't go to West Virginia. I stayed here. I'm not coaching the guys making as much money as I'm making. That ain't no way in hell that's ever going to happen. I ain't doing it, and I told Coach Rodriguez, I'll be the problem. The kids won't be the problem. I'm going to be the problem because I couldn't coach a guy. I'm sitting there knowing in college is making $750,000, $800,000.
Yeah.
No, I ain't doing that. I'll go back to D2 if it gets too bad here, because I'm just a ball coach, and stuff. So, but we've, I heard y'all talking and some things, about the guys going up, guys coming down and all that kind of stuff. I think really now is a time when a coaching staff really needs to have some damn good ball coaches. You're going to really need some good ball. I'm talking about fundamental guys can teach, especially on our level, because we're always going to be young in the backup area. When our backups come in, when our freshmen come in, like I got a guard I know from Jackson High School and down in South Alabama. He's going to come in here and he's 315, 20 pounds. He's going to step in that backup role right away. I'm going to get him ready. And I got a tackle, kid from down there in Birmingham area. So those are two guys I got right now are going to have to come in. And like I signed 5 high school kids last year and signed 4 high school kids the year before. So I don't want to be living by the portal. I don't want to have to go out there and get me 5 guys out of the portal that I've got to make a living with. I got 2 this year, one 6'5", 320, and another kid 6'3", 305. And, I'll take those 2 guys and plug in a couple spots, just like we used to do with junior college guys, But I don't think you can make a living just portal every year.
Yeah. Well, Rick, especially coaching the position that you coach, we know the importance of continuity, keeping guys together, growing guys together so they know each other. How much harder does that make your job in achieving that and getting a group that plays like one unit?
Well, it's been a little bit different. The thing that happened to me this spring, all my older leadership went out the door. They graduated, so I had a bunch of young ones here. So I was having to lead. You know what I mean? And so when that happens, we kind of go back to the old Paris Island kind of routine. When I got to lead, their ass is in trouble. So, so we kind of got them. I got a good solid group. We had one couldn't take it, and one he moved on. This kind of deal stuff. But the 10 I've got or the 12 guys I've got right now, we're ready to go to war with them. Matter of fact, the one of the guys that left the center position, I've got a kid that was a walk-on that we awarded a scholarship to halfway through spring ball, and I've coached 3 guys that have won the Remington Award, and this kid's got as much ability, and he's quicker than any of them I've ever coached and stuff. So I told Coach Kelly, and he was talking about the one leaving. I said, hell, I ain't worried. I said, we got a better one waiting in the wings and stuff, but he hadn't played. He's going to be inexperienced, and I can give him everything but the experience, and I can't give him that. But talent-wise, hell, I ain't even flinching on that. I mean, this old boy now, he's got me fired up. I'm excited, As far as that portal thing, all it does is piss me off, make me want to be a better coach. So, I told somebody the other day that I said they done me hot now. I'm gonna do the best coaching job I've ever done. You gotta approach it that way, or you'll let it eat you up. I talked to line coaches today, asking them about the kid they had, and most of them are up in Power 4. Everybody's bitching. Everybody's complaining, but the quarterback left Tennessee. And all I know is some of us guys that are out there in the coaching world, somebody took him, If you don't like it, why are you taking them? Why do we keep doing it? If all the college coaches just said, hell, we ain't doing it no more, the kids wouldn't have nowhere to go. It'd all be over with. But that ain't going to happen.
Talk a little bit about, you didn't go to West Virginia, but another Trickett did. So I don't know how many people listening know you've got 3 sons in football. Tell the audience about them. I know you're proud of them.
Well, Travis, he went with Coach Rodriguez up there. He's the senior assistant, manages the offense, puts everything together for Rich and everything. And that's been a little difficult because we're kind of crossing. They're looking at ours and that kind of stuff. So we don't talk about it. You know, we just talk about family and stuff like that when I talk to him, because right now he's on the opposing team, you know. But Trav's a good football coach. He's smart, very, very smart guy and stuff. He'll do a good job. I know they're pleased with him up there right now. Then my middle son Chance, he's works for the Rams, and he's the one I bounce a lot of things off of. You know, as far as evaluation, things like that. I'll shoot him a thing of a kid, and he's a pretty good evaluator. He's been doing that for I think 12, 13 years now and stuff. So, but he's with the Rams, and then the youngest one, the hard-headed one, he's here, and he's an offensive coordinator here. He thinks he's my boss, but that ain't happening. So, yeah. I told Coach Kelly, I said he named me associate head coach just so I could tell Clint to kiss my ass if I didn't want to do something. You know, so, but Clint's here and has done a good job recruiting. I mean, we brought in some players at the portal has helped us here at midterm. We have got I'd say 5 or 6 real dudes for this level that just, you know, you go out there and you say, oh, these guys are different, you know, stuff. So there's pluses to it and there's minuses to it, you know.
Well, Ronnie, I mean, and everybody, and Brendan's right. Coach, we didn't really give you a formal introduction. I graduated Auburn right before you came there. Loved what you did. I was telling Ronnie, I came down to A-Day in 97 with a friend of mine who was about 6'6", 330. Walked out on the field after the game, and we walked up just to say hi to you, and you leaned over to him and shook his hand and said, how much eligibility you got left? That's one of the funniest things. We drove back to Memphis that night, and I've told that story a lot. And the coach, I think he knew you. He had played some junior college ball, but your resume, man, everywhere you've been, it's happened. West Virginia, Southern Illinois, New Mexico, Memphis, Mississippi State, Auburn, Florida State, now at Glenville, now at Jack State. Your way, you did 2 tours as a drill instructor, didn't you, at Paris Island?
No, I was never a drill instructor. I went there and I got the effects from the drill.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because
I just went from Paris Island straight to Vietnam. I mean, I went through Paris Island. I went home for 2 weeks. They sent my ass a case on. So,
all right, my brother-in-law is watching right now. He did 26 years in the Corps, and a lot of people got a ton of respect for you. And I love the way you do it, and I love the way you don't hold back. And I think kids today I've got 4 of them. They're starved for that kind of tough coaching, man. And I think a lot of coaches, they're getting out, and I applaud you and got a ton of respect for you for staying in, because football needs more coaches like you.
I think everybody has to be their own personality. Yeah. You know, Dante Scarnecchia, I was talking to him the other morning, and we just watched a video today where Matt Light and Dante was wearing him out up there and stuff, and they said, you know, if you're an offensive lineman, you got a 5'7", 160-pound offensive line coach screaming at you, and you're worried about him, you're gonna have a long day of bedrock when you get out on that field. You know, so but I think the kids, as long as they know, when they start seeing themselves become successful, you know, like, you know, I may get into one pretty good, but while I'm getting into him, I'm trying to tell him, you know, you got to put your right foot here, you got to bring your arm in underneath, and you got to tuck it up in there. Yeah. You know, while he's getting the other part, he's getting instructions on what he's doing wrong. I don't see that anymore. I mean, we get quarterbacks here that they don't know how to take the damn snap from the center. I mean, we tell them, all right, get under, and they look at me when they first get there like, what do you mean get under? I said, get under, take snap. Well, they don't know about wrist and an inch and a slight turn, put your hand. They don't know any of that. And so, you know, I think one thing Coach Kelly's done here, now we got some damn ball coaches. I mean, we have got us some football coaches here now. I'm going to tell you now. And even the young guys, I'm very impressed, because what they're coaching, when I put the tape on, I'm seeing it on film. like our D line. I mean, when they get their hand, I mean, they're locking out and they're pressing, and it's so. You don't see it all the time. I mean, I don't see it on film at anybody. We play a lot of teams, and I think one thing I think the difference and helped us win and has helped us win everywhere we've gone is that we are going to get after your ass in that offensive line. I'm talking about now, and they either got to fear them or get fear coming over to the sideline. So, like, I talked to Will Friend this morning. He was calling about one of my players, and he's at North Carolina. And they told him about the kid when he said, number so-and-so, and he said, yeah. He said, I'll take him. I don't even have to look at the film because I watched him kick the hell out of us all in the conference championship game and stuff. So, what you were talking about, when you can get 5 guys, I tell my guys all the time, you give me 5 guys, and this one ain't worried about himself. He's worried about this one. And this one, he's worried about this one. And they all worried about each other, not worried about themselves. And we go out there and play hard and get after 5 guys. We ain't going to get beat. And if we do, we're going to be hard to beat because we're going to get after you, and we're going to get after it for 60 minutes. Yeah. And so I think that's been a big part. Because a lot of kids right now, they're not real tough. A lot of them, they're not real tough. And when they get through here, they're pretty saucered and bloated when they get done here. So when we go play people, they're expecting an ass whipping. I mean, it's going to be a 15-round fight. So we go into it, and the day I can't coach it that way, and the day they tell me to back it down, that's when I'll be with Nick watching the ducks on the lake, I guess, So, but I think that's been a lot of key to our thing. We're going to out-tough you. We're going to play harder than you play, and then we're going to combine that with technique. Yeah. And when you do that, then you got a chance to be pretty decent.
Yeah, love it.
You talked about being on having good coaches. I know you and I were on 2 staffs together. What's the best coaching staff you've been on? At LSU staff and the Auburn staff were pretty good.
Yeah.
And the Florida State staff.
Yeah, it's hard to pick. I could pick a good staff out of among a lot of them I've been on and stuff. So, but
you put a lot of staff together at LSU. I think you hired what? You hired Freddie and me as GAs, and then helped Derek and Sal and
Jimbo got him
Jimbo
down there. Hell, Nick didn't even know who Jimbo Fisher was till I told him who he was, and got on a plane, flew up to Michigan with him. Pete Jenkins. Pete and I just talked to Pete the other day. Pete and I have been on 3 staffs together. We were Auburn, Mississippi State, and LSU and stuff. Yep. We always worked great together. I really enjoyed. I really had. I thought we made each other better. I've got a good young defensive line coach here right now, Xavier Garcia, and we work good together. And players, I think we've made each other better this spring. I know we have, and stuff. So I think that's important. There's too many guys right now, I think, in coaching that they want what coaching can do for them. They're not too much about actual coaching. I see a lot of them running around, guys that, I don't know how important it is to them, like you said, I was at Auburn, and the thing goes down at Auburn. I'm assistant head coach at Auburn. Can't find a job. Hell, there wasn't no jobs that year. That was a rough year for jobs, man. I would go be the head coach at Glenville State College, and then 6 months later, I'm back assistant head coach at LSU. So I went from about 120,000 to 50,000 back up to 130,000. So, but if you're a damn ball coach, you're a ball coach. I'm not going to sell it.
I remember we got fired at Auburn, and you talked about kind of getting in their ass and then picking them up a little bit. I was feeling down. We got fired, or Terry resigned in '98, and I'm coming down the hall, and I'm a young guy, and you looked at me, you hollered at me and said, come in here and sit your ass down. So I closed that door. So I came in and sat down. You said, listen, there's one thing you got to understand. There's two kinds of coaches, those that have been fired and those that are going to be. So you might as well just get the hell over it.
Yeah, it's going to happen to you. And I've never worried about that and stuff. And, these guys with all these contracts, these big contracts and all that stuff. Hell, I worked 40-some years on 1-year contract, never knowing. I just figured, I was banking on myself, Now they got to have a 3-year contract with this and that and all these buyouts. And I've never had an agent. I'm 77 years old, and I ain't talking to no damn agents. So these kids, they better go talk to somebody else because I ain't talking to no damn agent. I want to talk to the kid. I want to talk to the mom, the dad, the kid. And they can talk to the agent after I get through talking to them. But that's who I'm going to talk to, and then they can work it out. But, and half these guys aren't agents anyway. I call them street pimps. They just working off these damn kids trying to get money off of them and stuff like that. And when one kid tells you the guy wants 10 to 15%, most of them good agents I'm talking to, the pro guys, they want 1 to 2 to 3, maybe 3's high, and stuff. So, it's we're not in a good state right now in college football at all. It's not in a good place right now.
Rick, we just lost an old ball coach in Bill Oliver.
Oh yeah, brother.
I know brother. Tell us a favorite memory or two about brother.
I'll tell you what about brother. He came to Auburn, and so I went over and he told me, I think one of the biggest compliments anybody's ever given me, that I took it that way. He said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I break down a lot of people. And he said, we try to break you all down and stuff. He says, well, your offensive line, because I always tell them, I want the same stance every time. I don't give a damn if it's a run or pass. You got to show this. And I'm fanatic about that. And brother told me, he said, you're one of the few guys I never could get a read off of your guys on whether it was run or pass or anything like that. But I'll tell you one thing I admire about brother. He'd be in there about 4 o'clock in the morning, and he'd have that sheet of papers there down, and he'd be running that film. And that next play, if that wide receiver was 2 yards off that hash, he drew him 2 yards off that hash. Then he'd draw this receiver right on the numbers. And maybe the tight end was right here. And by the time he broke, and he just draw them up, he drew up every play, he drew it up, the formation. Well, when he got up drawing up in formations, well, when the game came and they lined up, as soon as he saw that one wide receiver 2 yards outside, hell, he knew what was coming. I mean, he did it, and it took him hours. Now, I'm talking about he'd be in there from 4 till 9 or 10 in the morning, just getting ready for the meeting and stuff like that. And I remember we'd be through a practice, and I'd say, brother, you going to watch film? He said, hell no, I ain't going to watch film. I just watched it out there on the field. Well, I'm going to go watch the film for you, But he was old school, but he really knew how to dissect people and he broke them down. And when he got through breaking them down, he knew them inside out. I could see how they won the national championship against Miami, because I promise you, he had Toretto and them down with their splits and their alignments and stuff. He knew exactly when to go blitz and when not to go blitz and that kind of stuff. So brother was one of a kind. He was one hell of a football coach.
Yeah. Coach, when you're talking about Tryon school at Auburn when I was there, just a monster, loved football. And I heard about, give me ball players, kids that love to play ball, that love the laundry is what they say. What are we doing with these kids today, setting them up when they get out in the real world and they try to switch jobs every 3 months? I hope to God they don't have a wife and kids and bills to pay.
Well, everything's backwards we got, everything's backwards for these kids. I mean, it's just everything's backwards. And that's why I'm trying to help this one player of mine out, because, he's done everything. He's got his second master's degree in 4.5 years. Wow. The second master's he's working on. And so he's paid his dues. He's played here. He started for 3 years. He hasn't missed a game. Boom, boom, boom. So, for him to go get set up, if he makes it to the league, fine. If he doesn't, then he got something to get maybe started on. But he'll be successful no matter what he does. He's graduate. He's got his degree. That poor guy that's in his fourth school that hasn't even graduated yet, that's been living off of $200,000 or $300,000 a year for maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, or whatever he's doing, and he don't make the league, he don't get in the NFL, he's got to go get a job for $75,000, maybe $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's all backwards for him. I mean, hell, his car notes, he probably won't even be able to play that stuff off and stuff. So,
yeah,
you're going to see a lot of bad credit. You're going to see a lot of college athletes with bad credit lines. I'm talking about horrible credit lines in the next 5-6 years of their life. Because I got one that left here, and I know right now he's struggling where he's at. And, if it don't work out for him, he bought that Hellcat car and all that, and and that paycheck stops, and he's got to let that car go and stuff like that. That's gonna go down on his credit, and then he'll, So we've messed it all up.
Yeah.
They took the NCAA 5 years ago. Y'all figure out the best way you can totally destroy college football. You figure it out. Just figure out the best way you could do whatever you could dream up. Boy, they hit the damn nail right on the head. Boom. So
scary.
Before we let you go, I've talked to Travis a lot about, he says West Virginia and Auburn are home. You spent 6 years with your family in Auburn. Since we're on an Auburn show, talk a little bit about Auburn and what it was like coaching
there. I got the first 3 years I was there, it was great. The last couple weren't very good, but Auburn's special. Auburn's a special place. Matter of fact, I've got a niece, a nephew that's got a daughter that's graduating from high school, and they came down to our house in Florida and for spring break, and they were down there. She was going to go visit Clemson and the University of Alabama and a couple of places, Florida State. She's a really, really smart girl and stuff. And I told my nephew, I said, why don't you take her by Auburn? I said, it's just on your way. And she's made full total application, not that interested in Clemson anymore. She's not going to go to Alabama. And she fell in love with Auburn. Yeah. She fell in love with the campus, the people she met, stuff like that. So Auburn's a special place. It really is. My kids, they love living there. I mean, they loved it. And, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Coach Dye. He was, he had just finished up, and I got to know him real well. And I really enjoyed going out there on the farm, riding around with him and that, gator he had, and talking football and stuff. So I got some real good memories of Auburn, and Terry, we started out, like a ball of fire, and stuff and things. Maybe started out too good, but, and then West Virginia, it was home. I've been there twice. I was there in the 70s. Matter of fact, Nick and I was there the last 77 and 78. Nick and I were on the staff together there. Two young coaches. We both had black hair and long hair and sideburns. We were dudes back then, just a couple guys looking to go out and recruit and sign a couple of players and coach the hell out of them. We learned to be ball coaches and stuff. And I hit him up on that after I gave him about a month or two after he retired. And we talked about that and stuff. But you know, it and then went back with Rich, and you know, and we were struggling there the first year or two, and then was able to get a guy from Mobile named Pat White, and he came up there and kind of straightened things out for us.
Yes.
You know, I've always been a better player when I get a coach, when I get them better players around. But had a lot of good kids, a lot of them Auburn kids, them players. You know, I can't believe, you know, Vic and Kendall Mack, we lost them. You know, stuff. It's hard for me to believe that, you know, those guys are going. You know, but Robeek, you know, and D. Curry, Willie, Stu Beat, we were playing Kennesaw State this year, and I called him. I said, I got a big one over here. I'm a young kid. I said, I need you to come over and talk to him if you can, you know, kind of help him a little bit and stuff. And Willie drove over, came over and visited with the players and talked to them day before the game, and that kind of stuff. So, you know, Jason Taylor, you know, I still stay in touch with those guys. And so there's a lot of them Auburn guys. Leonard Thomas, I told Leonard, I said, I could never put no weight on you. Now I looked at you and all the weight that Willie and them lost, Leonard gave it. Leonard's down in Montgomery, him and Geno James stuff. So, I mean, you know, we had a lot of good ball players now. I mean, I had a lot of NFL guys there, man. I mean, a lot of Kendall Simmons. I mean, a lot of, you know, I coached against Kendall last year and beat his ass too. So, but, you know, he was across the field, and we talked before the game and stuff and after the game and things. But it's going by pretty fast when you start looking back at it and stuff and things. But
it's hard to believe we've known each other 30 years, 29 years.
Yeah. I remember getting Nick to hire you down at LSU, and he was like, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, trust me on this one." So, well, you come in and did your job and got her done and stuff. So, but
and I've always appreciated that.
Well, that's what we're supposed to do in this business. We're supposed to help each other out and stuff. And you know, hell, I've had a lot of help in my career and my time and stuff. You know. Different guys and stuff.
I know that Freddie and I, we still talk from time to time. We still.
I talked to Freddie today. He's gonna call me tonight. They're after my kid pretty hard, you know. And you know, hell, I hired Freddie at Glenville. I got one quick Freddie story. I hired Freddie at Glenville, and hell, the coach had left. He took everything. He took all the footballs with him. Everything. I mean, we had nothing. So I hired Freddie, and we didn't have any cones. We didn't have nothing. So I told Freddie, I said, they doing construction work out there on the interstate, about 18 miles out the interstate. I said, take my old pickup tonight. I said, we need some of them cones out there and stuff. God, I come to work next day. I mean, we had 3-foot cones. We had 2. I think they stole every damn cone that was out there on the interstate. And stuff. Like, we had cones. We could run every drill. We could set up every drill in America. We had cones everywhere and stuff. And Freddie, I could never get him off the tractor. He loved cutting that grass. You know, I kept telling him, you know, the field's astroturf. You got to stay off of it. You know? But Freddie, he wanted to coach the linebackers. I had him coach the running backs, but I gave Freddie his first job and stuff. So,
he and Freddie and me and Adam Gase lived in a 1-bedroom flea-infested hellhole in Baton Rouge when we got there. I never will forget it. We had a great time though.
Oh yeah, Freddie, you're gonna have a good time. Freddie's around now. I promise you that. You know, stuff. So.
But it may not be anything you want to repeat when you get finished having a good time with.
Yeah, that's all right. Hell, we've all done a little bit of that, I think, down the road. And you got to have a hard edge, right? You know, stuff. Yep. But you guys, you know, spreading the word around and this kind of thing, and that we need to take note of this college football thing right now, because it's not in a good place. It's not in a good place at all, and stuff. And I really worry about the game. You know, the game's been good to me. It's been my family my football is our whole world. I mean, you know, my wife on Sunday, I mean, it's hard for the Tricketts to go 4-0. You know, I'm talking about when we were all different places. So, you know, we might be 3-1 and she's feeling bad for the one. Only if it's 3-1 and I'm the one, everybody doesn't feel too bad. You know what I mean? But it's when you let one of them boys lose now, boy, it kills her, you know, and that kind of stuff and things. But it's a hard business. It's the highs are high and the lows are low, you know. So, but
Coach, we appreciate you being with us.
All right, I appreciate y'all having me and stuff and everything. Hope y'all have a good day.
Don't ever retire.
Oh, I won't.
Keep going.
All right, I'll see y'all.
All right.
I love it. I mean, there you go. You just heard a guy that's been coaching that long. Who's going, you know, what's that song George Jones wrote? Who's going to fill their shoes? That's a great song about, you know, country music and coaching. Who's going to be an offensive line coach like a Trickett? Who's going to come along? I think the baseball model is something we better be paying attention to. You give 3 years, and as they started to, like you said, look at the recruiting pitch, Kevin, Paul Maneri. You know, you get to do this or this, this or this, this or this. Man, start doing it with football. And he just said, you're going to destroy your credit. You're going to me guy buying a $285,000 Lamborghini. Even people worth $150 million don't do that.
Well, you know, you could hear in his voice too how genuine he was when he said he's worried about the game, because as he's, you know, the game's been his life, and it's guys like him that care about the game, and it's guys like him whose opinions should matter about where the game is, where it isn't, where it should go from here, where it shouldn't go. And it wasn't it interesting, guys, that he talked about one of his players working on a second master's degree. And Ronnie,
in 4.5 years,
which is outstanding. And Ronnie, you mentioned it early in our conversation today. Are these guys getting an education anymore? When guys are, you know, Madden Iamaliava, I don't know the young man. I had never talked to his father. I never talked to him. He's at Arkansas. He's an early enrollee at Arkansas. First of all, he flipped on signing day, flipped from UCLA to Arkansas. He's in Fayetteville for what, 3.5, 4 months? And now he's going to leave, and he's going to start at another school in the summer, I guess the first summer semester. Because that's another thing. These guys have to finish out if the schools are following the rules, they got to finish the semester where they are now before they take any classes at the next school. But are they in the classroom? Are they taking online classes only? That's the only way some of this is happening, is these guys taking online classes. And I can tell you from the experience of my sons, there is no comparison between being in that classroom and taking online courses.
And Auburn, to their credit, because my son was in school there at the time, they never abandoned their duty to educate in person. A lot of schools did. Auburn didn't. You still were on campus, in-person learning. That's invaluable. But, yeah, man, we got to wrap it up. I know, Ronnie, you've got a pressing issue, but this is awesome stuff. Boy, you could like to sit around the table and drink a few cold ones with Coach Trickett. I mean,
for those who don't know,
he loves the game.
He loves it, and he's been a great mentor to me for a long time. And for those who don't know, that's a football coach.
Yeah. It makes me want to go buy one of those damn easy to roll Jack State hats. Next time I'm at Bucky's over there in Leeds, I'm going to get one or go by in Oxford, because I love it. He said, you're going to get a full 60 from us. That's old Tommy Agee-ism. And that's my kind of player. God love you, Maplesville, Alabama. All right. For executive producer, Brendan Martin, the best in the business, in the world. Thank you so much. Watch him. Scarbo knows he does great shows on this channel. The Buddy Martin Show tonight on this channel. And Ronnie Sanders, Auburn Undercover. I go to that. I'm addicted. I'm 35 to 40 times a day. I'm on that site. It's an addiction. I don't know what it is. So great stuff. We'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching. All right. Okay. There we go.